We have shifted to two fundamental things. Number one, we're an enterprise software industry versus just a security industry. And number two, identity. So the idea of controlling the door is moving to about identity.
We think of access control as keeping bad people out, as letting the right people in, as making sure that the door locks behind them and it's not left unlocked.
If my job is configuring systems, hate to break it to you, that value is going to decrease over time.
You kind of hinted to it as access control, not just as an expense, but as, a piece of, the revenue generating machine for some of these businesses.
There's a lot of things that can happen once you start getting into the data side of the installation part that we've gotten really good at doing. Now I could extract data out there and I could do a lot of other things.
Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee Break with Jake. I see a lot of familiar folks on here, but there's some new people too. So if you're not familiar with Coffee Break with Jake, we have this call every Friday, most Fridays at 11 a.m. And the purpose of the call is to bring together folks from all over the industry, really all over the world sometimes, to share best practices, to talk about trends, to talk about overcoming challenges. And selfishly, I host this call really to learn from you, because the most important things I've learned from people much smarter than me. I'm excited to have somebody much smarter than me here today. I'm joined by Lee Odess, and I'm going to give Lee a quick intro. I'm sure most of the folks on here know, but Lee Odess is a globally recognized leader in the access control industry. He's reshaping the landscape for today's connected world. As a business analyst, community builder, consultant, and engaging speaker, Lee combines his deep understanding of the access control and smart lock industry with a passion for creating safe, seamless spaces. His forward-thinking approach challenges conventional wisdom, helping businesses adopt cutting-edge solutions that redefine the role of access control for today and tomorrow. Through his monthly access control executive brief, which I recommend all of you guys go ahead and sign up for, Lee offers invaluable insights into market trends, emerging technologies, and strategic perspectives, keeping CEOs, executive teams, and industry professionals at the forefront of this rapidly evolving field. And besides all that, Lee's a super nice guy. I've had the chance to meet Lee in person several times and actually share coffee with him, like an actual coffee break with Jake. And so, Lee, I'm really excited to have you here. Thanks so much for being here. Tell me, did I miss anything? If you could, I know I kind of gave a broad overview, but for the sake of the group, would you tell us a little bit about your background in the industry?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And thanks for having me here. And thanks everybody who's attending. And I look forward to the conversation and learning as well. That thing's way too long. Primary focus is on the access control industry. I've was an integrator back in the day. My first sort of into the industry was at Brevo early days. And then from there, I was at Unikey in Orlando, actually. And then also Allegion. Started really in January of 2020, one out on our own with the idea that I was seeing a lot of sort of mainstream ways that things like I was listening to podcasts and I was on LinkedIn and, way I was consuming things. I didn't see that happening a lot within our industry. And then frankly, I was somewhat frustrated with sort of the transformation that I felt and knew was happening, but I wasn't seeing a lot of discussion going on with our industry. So I just started writing. Initial idea was to go bring ISC West, the big security show, onto LinkedIn. But I also met a whole bunch of companies outside of North America that frankly weren't coming to ISC West. So I was going to record a bunch of them and then go to the show, bring it together and sort of, think of it like as a digital media company. Well, COVID happened, but I had 70 interviews and I just started putting information out, built up a newsletter. Companies were like, hey, can you help us with that? And then wrote a book called The 6 Phase Changes Shaping Access Control. Fast forward to where we're at to now. I would break this down into 3 categories. We have an online community that's building. So we're creating what I'll call like the digital water cooler of everybody within the ecosystem. It's called PhySec Collective. And it's just like it sounds. It's a Slack group. People are in there, different channels talking about a lot of things. We've recently announced some partnerships with things like Aloha, which is a big locksmithing association here, ELF in Europe, DHI, so Door Hardware Institute is coming on board, bringing their people there, and also with SBC. It's an online community. We also do a bunch of stuff in person. So we bring the community there, do like thought leadership at most of the big shows that you see, and then also do consulting work. So content creation, consulting, and community are like the three focuses that we have.
See, you said my intro was too long, but I think I barely even scratched the surface. So I think you've done a great job introducing yourself, much better than me. So I apologize. I feel like I dropped the ball there a little
You're
bit
fine.
late, but
You're good, dude. No
thank
one
you,
needs it.
thank you, Lee. I want to get kind of right into some of the meat and potatoes of our talk today. And for those of you that are jumping on, if you saw in advance the email letting you know what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about the future of access control. But I think it's also really important to recognize that when we're talking about the future of access control, really access control today, I think, has changed. And when we start talking about access control in general, recognizing what access control is, what it isn't, what the motivations are for people that are making purchasing decisions for access control, and then kind of bridging the access control of today to the access control of tomorrow. So that's a mouthful. I'm going to get right into it with you here, Lee. You have mentioned in the past access control stopped being a door product and is becoming a part of how buildings and businesses operate. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? What does that mean?
Yeah. So the general thesis is that you're seeing a change go from where the sort of value proposition and ask of access control has been about keeping bad people out and locking and unlocking. And that was sort of what we needed to do. And we've done a really good job of it. A lot of the products since the 1970s were built, and we've done a really good job of it. And that's what they're now. The expectation though is that they're being asked to do what I'm calling the utility plus. So they're being asked to not only keep bad people out, but now they want to let the right people in. And these systems are being seen and being asked to help with operational efficiencies or to be integrated into other systems like HR systems. They're also being asked to do in certain verticals to be revenue generation tools. So it's not just the high security side, which if we really look at it, Omdia defines our industry globally as, call it 12 billion to 10 billion. I've been pretty well documented that those are garbage numbers, but our industry doesn't have any numbers. So we all hallucinate around the 10 and the 12 and just say, all right, well, fine. So, but let's just say it is 10 to 12. That is the high security, keeping bad people out. The stuff that was made for airports, and then we just apply to everything else underneath it, and you just used less of the system. That's the $10 billion industry. What's happening though is that once I have that baseline, the ability to leverage that utility being installed and understanding who the people are, and now that I can use this to get in the door, so now I have a relationship beyond just a card where I really didn't know who the person was. I always joke that access control is kind of funny. Like our self-identity and value is like keeping people safe. We just don't care that much about to get to know the people. We just want to keep them safe. But now we're starting to get to know who the people are, and with that we basically have currency and permission to leverage that expertise that we have if we so desire, but it's going to take on an entirely different approach, method. I usually use the analogy of saying, like, we're so used to as an industry of like a math equation where the denominator is what changed, but the numerator never did. So all the old truths applied, like how product flowed to marketplace, the value proposition, who the people were, like everything. Now the numerator and denominator have changed, and because of that, we need to take on different approach to how we and expectations. Frankly, everything from what lines you carry to the expectations, what the programs look at, how you sell it, the way product flows the marketplace, all of it. And that to us, when we did the math, is a $70 billion market. So there's a $60 billion gap an opportunity. I use 100 billion just because it's marketing and it's it's more fun to say 100 billion if you're saying 10 billion. But realistically, the math that we did, we looked at it and globally, except for China, and for the number we use was for every 1,800 square feet, there's a door, and then built around that is a bunch of revenue opportunities that came to the 60 billion. And frankly, I'll summarize it as this: we have shifted to two fundamental things. Number one, we're an enterprise software industry versus just a security industry. And number two, identity. So the idea of controlling the door is moving to about identity. And based off of those two factors is where you see this value opportunity if you choose. Because the legacy way that our industry is there, that $10 billion market that grows 5 to 7%, maybe 12. And there are outliers where that's greater, fine. But for every one outlier, I can show you 100 non in that area. That business is going to be around for a while, and it's fine. It's just not where I want to work, and I know it's not where a lot of other people want to work. But it doesn't mean that it's good or bad. This is an or. This is an and conversation, not an or. And we can have the high security cottage industry, but you're also going to have this mainstream larger market that's going to frankly overshadow it.
I think that's such an important piece of this, right? Because so many of the folks on the call, they're security guys. I mean, that's who I sell to is security integrators. And I think for the most part, we think of access control as keeping bad people out, as letting the right people in, as making sure that the door locks behind them and it's not left unlocked. But some of the things I've seen recently that I get really excited about, and you kind of hinted to it, is access control, not just as a expense, but as, a piece of, the revenue generating machine for some of these businesses. And I think about specifically, some of these folks that are using access control for renting out pickleball courts. I think of access control for, communities, vacation rental communities where they're using access control not just to get inside the community centers and the pool, but they're using it, the same app as ordering towels and beach rentals and all this stuff. And the access control is a piece of it, right? We want to keep bad people out. But it's a piece of something larger. I think this and concept is kind of what you're referring to. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Good summary. So no, but we can dive into specific. Actually, yeah. One thing I will. What you described though too is a shift that's happened here. Is that you gave use cases that like pickleball courts and rental communities and things like that. That's a great example of the shift that has happened, is to where now, because of the software capability. So we've been a hardware dominant industry that had software to support hardware. We're now a software industry that has hardware that supports software. It's a fundamental different way you shift. And part of that is you go deep into these verticals and value creation happens that hasn't traditionally been there. So again, like the pickleball thing is, yes, it's intended to keep people out, but now it's about how do I do reservations, bring people in? How do I create a network of multiple pickleball courts? Like there's a lot of opportunities. How do I tie in now when I know there's certain amount of people that are there, maybe the ice cream truck shows up and now it's part of a revenue opportunity that happens. So there's a lot of things that can happen once you start getting into the data side of the installation part that we've gotten really good at doing. Now I can extract data out there and I can do a lot of other things.
So you've used the phrase access control to access care. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does care mean in physical security?
Yeah, so I'll use care or sometimes enablement as another way of putting it. It's just, I think, a different point of view that if you try to look at these break points, if you would have, when the message and approach and things shift, you need to label them something different, because what you notice you do is if you call everything the same thing over and over again, there's just a group that has self-identified for that portion of what you're calling it and will challenge continuously. And so I try to reframe things. The access care side is like the letting the right people in. There's a human side of this. Like, again, it blows my mind we don't have more anthropologists and people that understand human factors of how engaging with our products and systems will work. And it shows up in certain ways. Like a lot of ADA compliant products, frankly, if you talk to anybody that uses them, suck. Like they just don't fundamentally work properly. Like the ADA is like the baseline of it should be. Also, our products, realistically don't help with people that maybe are hard of sight. They have maybe they're deaf. Like there's a lot of things that our products don't think about, that I think if we approach it with this idea of like this product is not only supposed to keep people out, but it's supposed to let them in. What would that experience be like if they built them for letting people in? And that's the care part that I talk about, and the enablement part that I talk about.
So, as access control, as the definition of access control changes, or at least expectations change, where does trust factor in, right? Where does it show up in access control decisions today? And how does that change design and sales?
My opinion is in 2020. So I'll talk about it from a high level and I can get into tactical. From a high level, it's actually when people say what's the biggest change that happened, when we talk about going this new modern era. And 2020 COVID's a great way of saying this is fundamentally when things have shifted, when you saw sort of trends accelerate, context change, capital resources come into our market that we've never seen before that are shaping it differently, expectations changing from companies that, whether it's public companies, the Wall Street, the street expecting different things, or integrators, end users, people. So I believe what has happened is that historically, access control has been defined off of the past. And part of the feature was that it moved slow, it adopted slow, it did a lot of things slow. It was a feature. In 2020, and if I was a buyer, and if I'm frankly an integrator, a lot of times I'm making decisions based off of the scorecard of what's been done over the past 30 years. So a rear view mirror saying, yeah, this product is good enough for what I need. I've got a good history with it. It's delivered. It's kept bad people out well. Yeah, sure, there's some things I don't like about it. And they tell me, it's on the roadmap for the past 10 years, but that's fine. Fundamentally, 80-20 rule. It does 80% of what I want. In 2020, you found, and companies started to question, do I trust and have comfort in the products that I'm selecting to help me for the next 30 years? That's fundamentally broken. And yes, there are people that still buy and want from the past, but there's a much larger market that is shifting to go after the expectations that it shows up different. And they do not trust and they do not have comfort that a lot of the systems that have historically been able to deliver keeping bad people out are going to be the ones that are going to be able to help them keep bad people out, plus also do all these other things that I'm being asked to go do. That's where trust and comfort shows up currently now, like especially in enterprise, multifamily. There's certain verticals, data centers, where legacy is just not working, commercial real estate, and there's a shift that has to happen on that end. It also then shows up tactically in things sort of like trust around privacy and like the cybersecurity side of things, biometrics increasing, data, what you happens there. Like that's like tactical, what I would call more tactical trust stuff. Like there's an introduction that's going to happen here soon. Talked to somebody about it yesterday, where some of the software sort of, especially as things move and you see what's happening with AI and the rest of it, to where there's going to be an entirely different trust fabric that's going to have to be created in our industry. That's not just, I've been doing this for 30 years, so trust me, or I'm an ex, military police officer, trust me, or I've got my CPP from ASIS, trust me. Like those things, just like you see in mainstream markets, are shifting to where like even just fundamentally like I don't have to go get a degree from Stanford. I can go take some Google courses and then, maybe even get paid more because they value what's going. So like the way education is being done is shifting. It's happening in our, like, it's just an example. That trust and comfort is just fundamentally new, and it needs a new approach to how we as an industry talk, show up, expect, value we deliver. All of that is shifting.
When I think about trust, I think about trust is it helps you overcome fears, right? Like fear of something, worry that this is not going to be the right solution. Do you think that most of the fear is that the legacy products won't be able to support all of the and? I mean, I think about all of these systems that are closed ecosystems, right? That don't that don't play nice with others. And a lot of security folks that have the certifications and would go into a sales call and say, "Hey, I'm a security guy. I've been doing security for 30 years." What is the fear? I guess help me understand, what is the fear that they're having to overcome with these decision makers?
Well, I mean, I would just start with. The fear is that I make like a self-identity fear problem first, where people are worried about making a selection where before it's sort of like what is the old adage? Like if I buy Intel, no, I never get fired or whatever that IBM, maybe it was IBM, right? There's the old adage around that. Same type of thing. There were products in our industry that you could buy and frankly, you'll never get in trouble because you will be able to say yes based off of a scorecard of yesterday, value, determination of specs, whatever it might be, where moving forward, some of those systems, if you make a decision, they're going to be asked to go do something different and you can frankly lose your job because you made bad decisions on, high level capital investments that have gone in. And I think lose credibility along the way as being that expert because you are holding on to yesterday beliefs that don't support what needs to happen there. So there's a self-identity problem that I think actually creeps up in a lot. No one wants to talk about it. The other part is that there's a devil you know versus a devil you don't know trust factor that happens here. And you see it show up in large organizations specifically, but even in small ones to where a lot of times you can track the behavior of an organization based off the incentives that have been put in place. So there's almost sometimes a fear of if I challenge maybe some of the leadership that is there, I may lose my job because they don't want to be challenged, but and I'm incentivized to do the old, but I really know I need to go do the new. Am I going to speak up and say something to go do that? In everything from challenging ASIS and their lackluster training and certification programs and shows and everything that they do, frankly, to challenging even some of the new companies. Because this is not just a story about new good, old bad. No, just like there's new truths that we shouldn't do yet, there's also old truths that we shouldn't. And the fear, I think, is just being the self-identity, making proper decisions. That I would start there.
Who should product managers well, let me step back. One of the challenges that we see is we sell to security integrators, and they make their decisions based on certain criteria, and then they sell to end users. But these companies, these product managers that are looking at product roadmap, is it enough for them to be collecting feedback from security integrators, or who should they be listening to as they're figuring out their roadmaps and their go-to-market strategy?
There is a lack of single place to go do that, unfortunately. And it's not that easy. Well, number one, I'll even say end users are starting to get, especially depending on who you're talking about. Because again, this is an and thing. So there are areas and pockets where it's no different than before. It's why it's hard now to know where you invest your time and money because you could do local trade shows where you're doing pancake and egg breakfast, right? And, going into basements of hotels in the traditional way that we've done stuff with traditional milk runs to the traditional magazine. Fine, you can still do that. There's also this other part of the world where those tactics don't work. So you need to go spend the energy and the time and do it. Right now, the important part that I tell people when I get asked this question is, are you coming at me with a $10 billion mindset or a $100 billion mindset? Because then I'll answer the question totally different. If you are a $10 billion mindset, which is fine, again, like I'm not saying it's bad. It's a choice you're making. I choose to work in the 100 billion doesn't mean that I'm right. It just means that's where I spend my time. If you're going to be a $10 billion mindset business and grow and, I'm all for keeping it local, keeping it small. That's fine. Here's what I would recommend that you do in the market based off of that. And here's how I would approach expectations of products, the way that you pay, the way that you operate, which is in who you partner with and what you do. In the 100 billion, I would say, all right, who do you want to be? The hard part is currently right now is the majority of the market is still functioning in the $10 billion industry. Like that's where a lot of the information, money, everything is currently now. But every day that goes by, that $100 billion market continues to get larger and larger. You're starting to see those things break down. You start to see some things from even standards of products money coming in, and I'll give you 100 examples of where that is showing up. So you almost have to do two things at once, where you're serving that traditional market and sort of have that mindset. And okay, when it's this customer or this approach, here's the product set that and how we go after it. When it's over here, here's what we have to do. So a good example: if I'm an integrator, some of the certifications and trainings and maybe some of the people I have on board would be different if I'm taking the 100 billion, which is more of a enterprise software. So like I don't know everybody that's on here, but some of you may want to start thinking about being Salesforce certified and Workday certified and ServiceNow certified. Full disclosure, my wife works there. It doesn't matter, but just saying it because people get weird. That side where, historically, like, why am I going to go do that? I install locks, I hang readers, I hang this, and we do security stuff, right? So I would start looking at that, and also your product mix. Like this is I'll get the question of like, what are the top 5 brands I should be working with? It's like, I don't
Well,
know.
whatever SS&Si sells, that's the
Yes,
easy
that's
one.
what I always tell them. Yeah, but no, but it's like, what vertical, what's your business? Like getting to understand that to where I would do. I think I'll get another good example. Old mentality, I carry all these lines just in case so I can take care of a customer that comes in. New, I am knee deep. I wake up in the morning thinking about this company. I go to bed at night thinking about this company. And I have, as an integrator, I have a program that manufacturers have to sign up for in order to get my business versus them dictating, frankly, what has historically been a program wrapped around a legal document to get access and to give you financial terms. And then, oh yeah, then we do some programs around it. No, I think it shifts where you start to see somewhat more of a franchising type model. I'll call it that without it being exactly that. And you see manufacturers do business development, direct team, and you bring their product to the market for them in those configurations with a lot of details and ornaments hung off of that. But it looks fundamentally different than it looks today.
We talk about the $100 billion opportunity or thereabouts, right? We'll call it 100 billion. And you talk about the $10 billion mindset. And in between, you talk about making sure that you have folks on your team that have the right specialties that might be outside of security, maybe a Salesforce or a Workday or ServiceNow. Is it fair to say that if you look at the entire $100 billion, opportunity, that you very quickly can get outside of your depth? And would you recommend, if you're looking beyond the $10 billion opportunity, do you carve that up and just focus on some specific verticals where you can do really, really well and have the right, folks on your team to support it?
Of course, you could get off track if that's not the strategy and you're not necessarily investing in it properly and the customer base that you go after, all of those things that can make it the wrong decision. That's why this is a really big deal right now. It is the numerator and denominator had changed. Another example I use is like our industry has historically, we pick up the same kaleidoscope and we just click it once and then we're like, it's new. It's like, no, this is a fundamental different kaleidoscope and it looks very different. So treat it that way. If you don't, this is not about iteration at all. Like I don't think you can. I mean, we see some people do it where they actually have separate companies. So like, I'll give you a locksmith because that's typically the one that people are like, I think it's a wrong statement, but they don't get painted the most sophisticated group in some ways, right? So, but if you dig into it, there are very sophisticated locksmiths, and we see ones that have separate divisions of electronics to traditional mechanical, and like that is, that's one way to do it. I also think there's ways to just morph. But yeah, so I would look at my strategy, who I want to be, the verticals that I go after, the customer base based off of where I live, if it's geography driven or global like enterprise, that would dictate it. And then I would build the product set to be able to sufficiently, or go partner with people in that world and bring those expertise. Like a good example, there are systems integrators that come from the enterprise software world, which is very different than systems integrators as we define it. They're software oriented systems integrators. They now, let's say commercial real estate, large commercial real estate portfolios are bringing these systems integrators like Deloitte and Accenture and Fujitsu and Wipro. There's like a billion smaller companies, 12 person shops, if you would, that focus on these things. They are being brought in to say, hey, I need to get more tenants into my building and I need my attrition to reduce. And they are more or less becoming hospitality companies. And they're also having like new requirements, like I need to be able to do office sharing and amenity sharing and things like that that are different than I've ever had to worry about before. Before I sold them a suite and I did, construction on it, and I probably worried about the lobby and I worried about parking. Now it's about experience. So they're bringing them in and they're saying like, hey, here's what you need to do, get more mobile. You need to create an application to help sell services, this and that, blah, blah, blah. It actually is starting to trickle down into the actual products being specified, or in some cases ripped and replaced. I can give you core projects across the country that this is happening in. So it's like, it's more theoretical. It's not theoretical. It's actually happening. And they're dictating specifications from a software standpoint that are trickling down to whether hardware, if it's existing, is compatible enough. And it's introducing middleware companies that are now saying, yeah, we can sit on top of this old stuff and make it do what it needs to do. Go ahead, render that access control system to a single user, single card. We'll move the value, the sort of configuration above, or we'll pipe into it and have that system just export the sort of data so that we can go create the experience that you need on that end. Those companies don't typically do hardware. So there's a partnering opportunity to say, hey, we can work together to go sell this and, work both IT, OT, security approach. Or you can start to bring some of those things on. I do believe those companies are a wave that we're going to see here relatively soon. They're going to start acquiring companies like that in our industry because they're going to understand, this is why I call them inevitable trends. The architectures that are shifting in our industry to look more like enterprise software, they take on enterprise software formations. And once money starts to see the capital opportunity and the return on going from project-based business to reoccurring that is there, that's why you're seeing companies like Acre get acquired, AMAG get acquired. Like you're starting to see that this consolidation that's happening in the integrator level, they're going to start seeing that and they're going to start bolting that stuff onto their business because they've got to answer to the marketplace growth. They got to start eating things in order to go do that.
So I want to shift into AI and the rise of operational intelligence. We're watching AI move from detection into operational intelligence.
Yep.
What's the difference between identification and insight?
So the difference between identification and insight, I mean, just like it sounds, one is what you do with the information, and one is I want to use a different word than identify because you said but if one is
Okay.
one is like pointing at the thing, and the other thing is like, and now what with the thing, and that's how I've broken those down into. We've kind of gone from flat files of alerts to identification of anomalies and things like that to now the and what portion of it, the automation end of it, and that's where we're seeing value shift into that automation. This is why, I had a conversation with a guy yesterday that has a GSOC product, primarily free from those that are familiar with global security operating centers, right? The big things with the screens, right? And they're like, well, we're not in the access control industry. I'm like, yeah, yet. But because then I told them like, all right, so do you identify who people are and, do lockdown and things? They're like, yeah, we do all that stuff. It's automated. So yeah, blah, blah, blah. They do the whole thing. We use computer vision. And I mean, well, fundamentally, you're access control. So your Venn diagram of GSOC is turning into a platform that is, what's happening is, and how I try to explain it is, access control is becoming a part of a larger value proposition. So they're featurizing an industry in a lot of ways to where
Who
he's not
wins if
part of
that
it.
happens? So,
I
like,
mean,
if it is a part of a
those that do something about it.
yeah, okay.
I mean, I'd start there.
Where do you see the highest value use cases, right? When we're talking about AI and operational intelligence, where do you see the highest value use cases for it?
Yeah, I think in the enterprise, right? So I'd start there, especially with those that have large amount of users, many facilities where there's like a high level of assurance with high levels of what I call throughput, meaning I wanted to do security and convenience in a lot of ways, or I want to reduce my operational expenses of having 4,000 people sit in a room staring at a computer screen. And I want the system to just go do stuff based off of policies that are put into place. I want the ability in the enterprise for my system to support the idea that we have a lot of people that fly around and go do stuff. I look at my wife at Surface now; they have like 4,000 offices, and they're just starting to get to what looks like federated identity, where she doesn't have to put a request in to have her badge turn on to work in the New York office versus DC. Right? Those are like low level, like, yeah, I get it, I understand it type things, but really our industry's legacy products have to do, voodoo magic in a lot of ways for those things to happen because they weren't really built to go do that. So enterprise is a good one. I do think in the like everyone likes the shared home type space, like the Airbnbs and the rest. If you want to use the consumer side, multifamily is a place. College and university is heavy into that currently right now because that's like a village of, it's like a city within a city because of all the complexities and identity stuff that has to go on there. Data centers, like I talked about before, right now are high on the list. That market worries me because if it sneezes, we will get a cold as an industry. Yeah, so I'll stop there. I mean, I'm seeing in airports a big one right now, but yeah.
So voodoo magic is a really I love that. It's voodoo magic. Sounds easy enough, but it's not easy. It's not easy to do voodoo magic. It's actually really complicated to do voodoo magic and have expectations evolve to where people expect voodoo magic by default. And how do integrators that realize the complexity of doing all of that combat that, right? Like if the expectation is you should just be able to do that, how do they sell the value of actually making all of those things work and the time involved in that?
So there again, it depends on what system you're working with and how you approach things and what you do. And then again, this is why I think I would almost reset my partner list of who I work with based off of a different set of criteria to support your market motion of what you're going to go do into the market. Because there are tools and resources and products and things that actually what is seen as voodoo magic of the legacy are actually called features of the new that are in the business. And you're seeing some companies shift and change that way. There's ones I wish would go faster and could do more, but you start to see companies, they're seeing it in partnerships, you're seeing it in feature sets that they're doing. They're approaching things. A great example is visitor management. So I'll pick an easy one. Up until 2020, our industry treated visitor management as a byproduct that we kind of ignored. It was like a compliance tool or a cool factor thing that was used when someone's like, why can't I put this on an iPad? You're like, okay, I can put it on an iPad. Or, and then I'm being flippant, but there are certain verticals, like, again, I'll use them more for compliance, like in medical and schools that we're using in, what I'm calling compliance. But fundamentally, our industry treated it as like this weird thing. Coming through COVID, though, it frankly became digital interfaces to an analog industry. And we lost that opportunity to capture the value in a lot of ways because it went to other places to go do that. Private equity, Silicon Valley companies, a lot of people. That if we would have reset our brains to approach the marketplace from a thought and an idea of like, I need a digital interface now into this. And I'm going to look at those tools different to where all of a sudden I'm going to take the front door and it's going to be shifted to the phone to do health attestation. And like, how do I engage with it? Another one's like stadiums. This idea around ticketing and experience is actually the approach. If you were to approach it though, from a security standpoint, it's about barriers. It's not about the ticketing side and the rest of it, but you're seeing manufacturers start to shift into that. We're also, it's in my opinion, it's resetting who you partner with and how you approach and what are the expectations you have of them to support your market motion of how you want to go to market versus, again, this isn't about iteration. If you're approaching this on iteration by just going and collecting another brand because you're like, I need an automation thing. So you're going to look at it and be like, is it ambient? Is it Hivewatch? Is it this? Is it alert? Is it Swift? If you're going to treat them all as just extra features just so that you can be able to say yes, then it's going to fail.
Yeah, a week ago, you said the value of cutting doors and locksmithing continues to go up. We talk about all these software companies that are in the space, middleware, software, new access control, market entrants that are coming into the space. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to cut those doors, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's got to put that hardware in. And so where do you take, I mean, I see software companies and I see locksmiths and I see security integrators kind of in this weird spot, right? Like they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to make sure that they can do the and. Are locksmiths like the biggest winners in this? I mean,
No,
like,
no, no, no. No, what I do think what happens is there's a dumbbell approach to this because there's a value arbitrage that's happening from the traditional. Because if you think about it, the companies that I think that fundamentally have the most to lose right now if they don't do anything, I'll start with the physical access control, the PACs, that have historically been more or less distribution of products to the marketplace. They sat in between the integrator and the manufacturers of hardware in a lot of ways. And a lot of these packs historically have been the majority of their revenue comes from actually third-party hardware. That's readers, controllers, and the rest that goes through. It's like the big secret that everyone's talk about because it takes a while to like build reoccurring on that end projects or software. It's hard to stack that to actually where you saw enough. But I do believe those that don't shift, value is shifting to the software that sits on top of their systems because frankly, a lot of them have produced their products to be configuration tools of that hardware and admin tools of that hardware. And as things continue to evolve and software becomes smarter and AI and everything else, or third parties that sit on top, that the value in the configure and the hardware gets smarter where configuration is less. Like I'll give a good example. As more products move to the cloud, those cloud companies have more data to understand that it's a restaurant that this stuff is going into. And you can see the day where the product gets installed and it says, who are you? I'm a restaurant. And 80% of the configuration is done. And that last 20% is really tweaking it down to be what they need. And as software continues to get better, that last 20% may or may not need to be done by an integrator. Now, so value decreases as an integrator also if I don't do something, because if my job is configuring systems, hate to break it to you, that value is going to decrease over time. Now, you as an integrator have an opportunity though to move up, in my opinion, into defining what system integration means. The other one I'll give you is that as every video company becomes a access control company and access control becomes video and those systems start to work more together, being a systems integrator, a third-party siloed systems, value is going to decrease around that as these systems and the APIs and the way they work and standards like Aliro and Matter and things like those come together to make these systems work better together. The value is going to decrease on being a security integrator, and the value is going to increase on being a systems integrator based off of that customer set of tools and things that they need. Now, locksmiths, I believe, have a value opportunity here if they can get out of their own way, is that until they can make doors go whoosh and they're vapor, there is going to be a hardware point of what is hard to do, like cutting doors and putting those proper things in place on that end. It doesn't mean that value diminishes and goes away. I think value decreases and increases. And, when disruption happens, there are winners and losers. And it just depends on the percentage wise of who's the winners and who's the losers. It happens in the manufacturing side too. As more things move into this phone, the truths of how we've done credentialing and cards and all of that stuff is shifting. You're telling me that Apple and Google don't see opportunity in this? Okay, cool. Not the hill I'm going to die on to say that I'm going to be on the one that is value's going to shift somewhere.
I have to let you in on a secretly. The folks on the call already know I'm not super technical. I'm not a super technical guy. It's not my bag. What I really like is, I like brand. I like, storytelling. And, you've argued that as an industry, we're really great at local relationship selling. But we're terrible at telling a coherent global story.
Yeah.
Talk to
This
me
is my recent post. So
yeah.
This recently got a decent amount of engagement, both online and in Slack. So here's my thought. If you look at the sort of classic branding and marketing, 95% of the world is branding, 5% is actually marketing. That 5% of marketing are people that are ready to buy today. That 95% are people that are going to buy tomorrow to shift into that 5%. That 5% is transactionally driven. The 95 of branding, you're either going to make a decision based off of something someone told you or you discovered, like it's brand recognition, right? Our industry has historically, from a marketing standpoint, again, product heavy. Most marketing and manufacturers are underneath product organization, engineering, maybe sales sometimes on that end. And really our job was to make cut sheets, was to do websites and to give tools to the integrators to be able to do that last mile selling on our behalf to go do that. Then, unfortunately, there's this thing called the internet that came along and social media and all this the rest of the stuff that have changed the way buying is done. And you start to have a relationship that is maybe not dictated and driven by the traditional way that our information flow went to market. On top of that, you also have large amount of capital coming in, which are allowing for things to happen that were historically not done before. Take a Verkada, where they've done a lot when it comes to branding and marketing. They've also invested in the local side of it. So then the other thing is that our companies typically do, buying is being done, especially if you're looking at some of the B2B tools like LinkedIn and things like that. Those are typically personal type relationship messages. You get to know Jake before you get to know SS&I, right? You start to build relationships there. But our companies in our industry don't have the talent typically empowered. If they do have the talent, they're not empowered, and they're not incentivized to go tell a local story with a global method to go do that. So that's why you see bland and frankly ineffective marketing tactics by brands online, and you don't see as much, or when you do, it's easy to identify those like yourself, Jake, that have built a personal brand that drives business for your company. Like you're actually one of the people I use as an example of like, see, it can happen if you don't let the legal department and you don't let some, a communications department get in the way of allowing people to go tell a message. Good things can happen. So we just don't have the skill sets. As we move into a mainstream market, we're going to have to. And it trickles down in a lot of ways, though, too, to, I'll take the local integrator, the way that local integrators market. There's a balance of the old methods and new methods that have to happen. Like I get the value in golf tournaments and stuff like that, but there may be also some opportunities to leverage some of the online tools that are not just, frankly, going to be like search, like your SEO, but like, are you doing press releases because those are put on your website, and now ChatGPT and Claude and the rest of them where people are using to go search, even Google is doing as well. They're grabbing that information to, show you highlighted locally in the market. It's just fundamentally, we suck at telling stories and we need to get better at it. And the only way we get better at it is if we prioritize it.
And we get legal and legal out of the way, right?
Yeah, I mean, or figure out what are the rules to
Sure.
engage and then work within those. Fine, but those departments saying no to a branding exercise, and also, frankly, the marketing department needs to bring those people in as stakeholders as well to be able to show that, hey, doing this thing is going to go to, like, again, I'll just say, like, I don't find any value in GSX for those that go to it because it's a legacy, old way of doing things that, frankly, people approach it like, well, I'm not going to get fired if I do it, and I got the budget, approved already, so I'm just going to show up like, mummies. I think there's ways to exercise and bring on more risk, which I don't think is very high risk, to go tell a more modern story someplace else. And you will see a higher rate of return both now and in the future if you were to go invest in certain areas. Like, how many of you invest in Reddit? Like time and energy?
Raise your hands if you go ahead and use the hand raise function if you do spend time other than just searching random issues around the house and that kind of thing. Which
Like, how many of you are building brand and marketing in Reddit right now?
we see,
Probably
yeah,
nothing.
okay. We've got 3 out of
Good.
36, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at
Wow.
some point, it should be 33 out of 36, honestly.
Yeah. All right, we got a few minutes left. I want to go through some rapid fire ones with you. Most overrated buzzword in access control right now.
Platform, unified platform.
One old truth.
I'm sorry, open. I'm going to go with open.
Open platform.
There you go.
Okay, all right. One old truth that must die this year.
Old truth that must die this year. That manufacturers building business development and relationships with the end user is bad for my business.
Yeah, I think you can. I want to just say that because there's some folks on here where that may hit a nerve. I
That was
think you
on
can do.
purpose.
Yeah, I think you can do it the right way. I
Correct.
really do. And I've seen it done the right way. I've seen it done the wrong way too. We could have a whole nother conversation on that. One thing you believe that the industry is early on and not late to.
Well, I mean, I'll just say the fundamental importance of being safe and feeling safe. I think we're gonna, Gallup did a report. I want to say it was last year was the first time globally people, the sentiment they were giving was where they don't feel safe and they aren't safe in their local where they live. And I think our identity and passion around that is early to a market that's going to be expecting that type of stuff. And that's the opportunity we have if we want to. We talk about ESG, and I always focus on the S part because I believe that's the domain that we can own, which is you can do a direct line to GDP in markets where people are safe and they feel safe. And I think we could be the experts to go deliver that.
All right, fill in the blanks for me. Stop blank and start blank.
Stop telling me all the reasons why we can't based off of yesterday historical reasons, and start telling me all the reasons why we can because of those historical reasons. There are opportunities moving forward.
I love it. Guys, I want to encourage you. We've dropped some links in the chat to Lee's website. I want you to check that out. Lee, I want to thank you for being here and sharing your insights with us today. Really enjoyed talking with you. Guys, if you've not been on Coffee Break, or if you've been on Coffee Break, I want you to know that if you do business with us, I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to serve you as your distributor. If you don't do business with us, I would love the opportunity to talk to you about maybe your access control hardware. We do private labeling on it. We'd love to do it for free for you. So please feel free to reach out to me after the call if you'd like to discuss. That being said, whether you do business with us or not, you are always welcome on Coffee Break with Jake. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week at 11 a.m. On Friday, same time, same place. Thanks again, Lee.
Hey, thank you.